Hey guys, this is Brittany from By Brittany Goldwyn. I post videos about plants and projects, and if you are in the mood for a long and meandering garden tour, you're in luck because that's what we are doing today. I think my last tour I did was maybe, let's see, it's April 5th, probably early March, maybe late February, and that was my super late winter, super early spring garden tour. So a lot has changed since then. We're gonna cover what's going on in the greenhouse and then walk around the yard to show you guys some of the things that are growing and some of the things that we're working on. Let's take a look around the greenhouse here. I got some new plastic shelving that has really helped me maximize some of my plant space here in the sunniest corner of the greenhouse. This is the area where I have a bunch of perennials I'm working on propagating. All of these are from plants in my own yard, and I'm working on them to either add to my own garden or to give away or to sell or just whatever I feel like doing with them. So a lot of them I'm going to put to good use in our front yard, which I'll show you guys in a little bit. That's kind of like our big early spring project this year. I've also got a lot of veggie starts that I've started to pot up. I've got all sorts of different kinds of tomatoes here. I've got, what else do I have here? Cucumbers. I've got eggplants. I also got this little rack from IKEA too, which is really a great size for maximizing this sunny corner here as well. Some stuff that hasn't quite sprouted yet. I've got some moonflower vine seeds seeded in here, and then a couple more things back here. This sedum is also a perennial seeded from or propagated from my own plants. And then one of the things that I'm really excited about is how successful some of these like mass plantings of vegetables and flowers have been doing. So I try not to buy these clamshell salad containers, but if I do, I've been using them either for winter sowing out in the yard or for just mass seed starting. So these are all of my extra Roma tomato seeds, and they were already a couple years old, so I figured I'll just wipe them out this year, sprinkle all my extras into here, and then I will just carefully cut these out and pot them up, which I've already done with quite a few things that I'd seeded in my salad containers. Some of my smaller Roma tomatoes, I think, now this is a sun gold pole, but some of my smaller ones are things that I've already potted up. And then I've got a couple more up here. This is how I started a bunch of alyssum, and then all of my extra eggplant seeds I dumped into one of these as well. I have some of my favorite Henry Wild sunflower seeds seeded in here. I like to direct sow sunflowers, but I also like to start these a little bit earlier in the season since they can get a bit leggy and kind of gross looking toward the end. So I like to succession plant them by starting some early. This is a little experiment I'm doing with some raspberry bushes that I dug up from my neighbor's yard. We did end up planting a lot of them in the yard, but a lot of them I had to cut down, and some of them I just trimmed up to try and root the canes here so that I can pass those along to others. And some of them still have some really nice green growth on them, so I think they're still doing pretty well. I sold a bunch of perennials in my local garden group, and lavender was by far the most popular, so I decided to root a couple more lavender cuttings in mass in here. I just seeded these in here a couple weeks ago, so probably not ready to be potted up just yet, but lavender is something that I actually have a whole video on how to propagate perennial herbs like rosemary and lavender. It's easy. You just have to remember to take a growth tip that has a softer stem growth. You don't want anything that has like a super hard woodier stem growth because your chances of rooting it will be much, much lower than that softer new growth. So that's the trick to propagating your rosemary and lavender. I also have quite a few houseplants that I've been trimming up their leggy growth in the end of season and rooting those to take to a plant sale. Lots of Hoyas, lots of pothos. I trimmed up a bunch of my pothos plants, rooted all of those cuttings into new plants. So I've just kind of got those scattered around the greenhouse here in some of the lower light areas. Since most of these plants don't like direct light, they do best in bright indirect light. Over here, I've got where we are starting the sweet potato slips. These have really not been doing anything for a while, but finally, I noticed some little growth on here. So I'm starting slips 2 ways this year. I am putting what you see here, a potato from my crop last year, down about halfway, about a third of the way into soil, and keeping everything moist, keeping it warm, and keeping it in a sunny place. And these are the beginnings of our sweet potato slips popping out. So I will be able to pop those off and plant them, hoping to get some from both of these potatoes and share those with my mom because she gave me slips last year. This is an experiment that I'm actually working on a whole video for. This is, I went to H Mart and I bought taro root bulbs. So these are edible roots, and you're probably familiar with these as a type of elephant ear plant. So I'll throw up a picture of what the bulbs look like and what the plants look like when they are bigger. So it's a kind of elephant ear called colocasia, and it will generally be referred to in the store as a taro root, or I can't remember what the other name is, but I will throw the text up here too. So I love growing elephant ears for just decorative plants in the summer. So I decided this year to try to grow some from our local grocery store, and I also ordered some from a root bulb nursery on Etsy, and I'm going to compare the two because growing from the grocery store is much, much cheaper. So if I'm able to successfully grow these plants and then harvest a bunch of taro root from them at the end of the season, that tells me that you don't need to spend extra money buying them from an actual nursery. You can just get some from like your local H Mart and sprout them. So they are doing really, really well. These 3, all of them, all the ones that are labeled are from my grocery store haul. So right now it seems like 4 of the 5 have sprouted. This one right here was the biggest, and it has already unfurled a leaf. And then the other 3 are in different stages of unfurling leaves. The last one, I did plant these a little bit later. These are the bulbs that I ordered offline from an edible bulb nursery. They haven't sprouted yet, but I think I'll give them another couple weeks before digging down to see if they're rotting or anything. And then I'm doing the same experiment here with some ginger to see if I can sprout that ahead of time here in the greenhouse on a seedling heat mat because they need consistently warm soil, and it's still getting quite cold here some nights in Maryland zone 7A. So the seedling heat mat really helps to keep that soil nice and warm, which has been really beneficial for the taro, the sweet potato slips I'm rooting, and hopefully for the ginger as well. This will be my first time growing ginger from ginger pieces from the grocery store, so I'm really excited to see if this one is successful. Now we're gonna head out of the greenhouse and take a look first at the Greenstalk vertical garden that I did a video on earlier in the season, much earlier in the season, showing you guys how the Greenstalk system works and how to set it up. Now, I seeded these very early on in the season when it was a little bit warmer in the greenhouse than it was outside. I put lots of greens in here. I went ahead and threw in all my extra cauliflower starts. I don't know if they'll actually do anything, but I figured why not try it in here since these are nice and deep plant pockets, deeper than my other Greenstalk, meaning you can grow more types of things in them. But this is mostly spinach and lettuce in here. I just come out and usually try and rotate this maybe once every couple days to make sure the light is pretty even. And this is on wheels. I'm not sure if I'm going to end up moving this later on in the season. I had planned to keep it up here on the greenhouse concrete pad, but then Vigo Gardens sent me this raised bed to review. I will have a whole video about this, but I do want to wait until it gets a little bit warmer because I'm planning on putting some things in this bed that it's a little bit too early to plant. But I mean, just as a little teaser, I love it. It's great. I love my Vigo Garden beds. They're super high quality, super easy to put together, and I love having something that's raised off the ground and also gives me a little bit of storage down here. Now, these will also be great for some of the things I want to plant that may be spreaders, so I may want to contain their growth a little bit, but a lot of the pots I have, like these fabric pots over here, may not be big enough for what I want to put in here. I'm kind of thinking I might want to do some mint in here and some sunchokes, which spread like crazy. Some people call them Jerusalem artichokes. They are a type of sunflower that has edible tubers, and they grow and spread like wild. So until I know that it's something I like to grow and that I'm okay controlling the spread of, I want to plant them in something that will contain their spread. I mentioned the pots. I have potatoes over here right next to the greenhouse pad. These I planted really early in the greenhouse, and then I put them out a couple weeks ago. The sprouts have been nuked off a couple of times with some super cold nights here, but whenever that happens, they rebound really, really fast. And we do have one under freezing night next week that I will probably end up pulling these inside the greenhouse just for the night, so I don't undo all of the progress that we've made with them so far. Over here, this is the area where we turned a whole 15 by 15 patch of grass into an in-ground garden bed. We did this primarily to plant asparagus, which we are very excited to see popping up here. This was the first winter with this area, and asparagus is a perennial vegetable that can take a while to get established. So we were kind of worried. We had some super, super harsh colds this winter in Maryland, much colder, much less mild than things were the winter before. So I was very worried that the crowns would not survive their first year in the ground. They wouldn't be established. However, we bought bare root crowns, so they were already pretty hefty, and I think almost every plant has sprouted, maybe but one or two. You're not supposed to eat asparagus the first year you grow it, so I think I took off maybe 1 or 2 spears last year because I truly could not help myself. But this year now, since we planted at bare root crowns, the plants are now several years old, so we will begin harvesting some of this asparagus. I'm just waiting until we have enough that I can harvest enough for one whole meal for us, which will be very, very exciting. Check out this tall one here. That one probably needs picked. And then between all of the asparagus plants, I ended up planting strawberries. These are June-bearing strawberries. I ordered these from Stark Brothers online. They had a really good sale going on. So I just planted these between each of the asparagus plants because asparagus has a very, very large, deep root system. So it's kind of hard to plant a lot of things nearby them, but strawberries have a really, really shallow root system, and they reproduce usually by, having offsets and runners that then root very shallow in the soil. They can also create a really nice living mulch between your asparagus plants, so as a soil cover, which is always a good thing, not having that bare soil. So we're really hoping that that ends up working out well, having those two together as companion plants. In the third row over here, we have garlic. I did a video on planting my garlic last fall. It still honestly blows my mind that you just put one single clove of garlic in the ground, and over the winter it grows, and then it sprouts and it grows a whole new bulb of garlic. I know that's exactly how plants work, but it still blows my mind every single time I see it happening. I think I am going to replant garlic in this same area next year, but I will plant them a little bit closer together. I planted them a little bit farther together just because this was the first time planting garlic in this brand new bed, and I was growing a variety from my cousin Jimmy. He gave me a couple pieces of his seed garlic that he grows every year, and I wasn't really sure how it will grow in this area or how big the bulbs would get. So this will give me an idea, a good baseline of whether I should maintain the same distance next year or if I can get away with planting them a little bit closer together to get a couple more plants in, because this is a lot of garlic, and garlic can store for a little while, but I don't know that we'll be able to eat all of this garlic before we need to. So I'm hoping to be able to share some of this with family members who are not growing garlic this year. One of the things that I'm trying to get a lot better at this year is maximizing our space in succession planting. So this garlic has been growing since last fall. I will plan to pull this probably in June, and I will plan to plant our sweet potato slips up and down this road just as we did last year, probably in early May, and those won't really start taking off until about July. So I'll get the sweet potato starts going in here, and by the time they really start to grow, the garlic will have already been pulled up, so I'm able to maximize this space. I'm also even considering putting in some sort of trellising solution in here to trellis the sweet potato vines up to create more room on the bottom for growing things in between my sweet potato plants. That way I'm hoping that I can trellis them up to save some space and to create a little bit of a shaded area that maybe will allow me to grow some greens in the ground here for a little bit longer, since that shade will hopefully prevent them from going to seed and bolting for a little bit longer in the summer. But we'll see. I'm not really sure how that's going to work, and I'm still kind of playing around with how to best succession plant and maximize this space. Now, of course, over here to the raised beds, it's still way too early in early April for us to be mulching. So it looks a bit messy in here, and I've already started splitting some of my perennials, but you can see a lot of things are coming back with a vengeance. We've got thyme here, we've got rosemary, a bunch of hyacinths I put in last year. I love having those early spring blooms to use for just adding color to the garden or doing bouquets, because I absolutely love how they smell. These sage plants are really taking off. I propagated these last fall and planted them before the winter, and they survived just fine. They've done amazing. This is a yarrow plant that I split off. This one I've done a lot of propagations from, and this actually gets quite large and has really beautiful flowers, so it will fill out this space really nicely. This bed right here, I actually have Brussels sprouts in here that I planted too late last fall, and I've kind of just been letting them like finish their life cycle and go to seed, because you know it's a nice visual interest in here, and then whatever I can't take from it I will just throw in the compost. And then I've just got a random assortment of things in here. I like to use this arch trellis here to do sugar snap peas earliest in the season, and then replace those with pole or runner beans as the sugar snap peas are coming to a close. And then I've just got a bunch of fava beans, Swiss chard, spinach, lettuce, other stuff throughout this bed to really maximize this space. Over here on the other side, I've got some more sugar snap peas, my green onions that I have a video about splitting. They do multiply, so I split them out and planted them in a whole row here. This bed has some more kale and just a bunch of greens. We can never have enough greens in our house. We eat a lot of salads. And one of my absolute favorite plants that I'm so happy I put so much of around the garden last year is moss phlox. So you'll hear this called moss phlox, or sometimes a creeping phlox. This is a perennial plant here, and as you can see in early April, it's a very early bloomer. So it covers a lot of ground, which really fills in a lot of space nicely without, you know, crowding out some of the bigger plants like this blueberry bush growing right next to it. And this catmint will do the same thing, but it's just a little bit later in the season for this one to really take off. So my goal is to have this whole area, we'll mulch it, but I want to cover as much of the ground as I can, because that's really good for moisture retention, and having perennials planted around my beds is super low maintenance. I don't have to water them. They come back year after year. They don't require a lot of work, just leaving them to die off, and then I cut them down right around now. Some of these I actually never cut down. I never cut down the phlox. It just kind of takes care of itself. But the catmint I just cut down yesterday because it's pretty consistently warm here now. I also have split off a bunch of radon. This is not radon, sorry. This is called Aster, Radon's Favorite, or Radon's Favorite Aster. And this variety has just these absolutely gorgeous bluish, purplish flowers very late in the fall. So this is a late season pollinator. When a lot of other things are dying or dead, the Aster, Radon's Favorite, has just these gorgeous flowers. I'll throw up a picture of what they look like. It's one of my favorites, and I want to put some of these in the front yard too. We have Henry joining us here. Hi, Henry. Hey, Bubs, you want to show them what's in the little greenhouse? I ran out of sunny space in my actual greenhouse, so we're still using this little plastic one that I've used for years for some of my overflow plants. I've got a bunch of loofah plants here that I've started, which I am not growing loofah in my yard because it requires a lot of space, but I am going to be taking these to our Master Gardener plant sale, and also just passing them along to lucky people who have a ton of space to grow. So this is just kind of my overflow area. So back to the garden area. Our phlox is just looking so good. I love that. I want to split some more and spread it throughout the yard. All of my winter sowing is right here. This is a great area that gets a good amount of light with some wind protection. So all of my winter sowing has been here. Some of it you can see the leaves are starting to push against the top of the containers, which probably means it's about time for me to get in there and see how things look. I think that one's a coneflower. This one here is a bunch of swamp milkweed. And these I seeded very, very early on, probably in January. I was actually worried it would be a little bit too late. New York ironweed here, because a lot of the native perennials in this area, you need to mimic the natural environment that they're accustomed to growing in. And one way of doing that is just growing them outside. So you put them in containers like this so that they have a little bit of soil, and the covers on the containers protect the plants from the elements when it's too cold, but the openings or holes at the top will allow moisture and water through so that they will be able to get the water they need to germinate. And then of course it creates a nice little greenhouse effect where the plants and the soil heats up. Even when you're under a foot of snow, you don't have to worry about it. The first year I was really freaked out about seeing all the snow over the winter sowing, but I mean, think about it. When plants spread in the wild, they're just used to the elements. They've grown accustomed to growing in our climate. So winter sowing is a really great way to grow a lot of your perennial native plants. And it doesn't take a whole lot of work because it does a lot of the work for you. That said, I do grow a couple of things this method that are not plants that need cold stratified or winter sown. Like this is some French marigolds. Here's some more yellow marigolds. I don't even know what this is. Oh, that's more milkweed. And I've got a couple herbs over here that aren't perennial herbs that I have been growing in this method. Now, it's a little bit different with them. I don't put them out as early in January. So this is a tropical non-hardy hibiscus that I ordered online. It's the kind of hibiscus where you can make tea out of the calyxes that the plant forms. So this one, I seeded this one, I'd say about a month ago and just popped it out here. And they were a little bit slower to germinate than the ones that I have inside under lights, but I'm sure that they will catch up. Now this method is sometimes kind of a bust. This is marigold seeds that I put in here, and it is still possible that they'll sprout, but I'm not seeing anything from this one yet. And then this one is full of zinnias. And something I'm learning this year is that these containers, they might not be the best for winter sowing out here unless I poke some more holes in the top, because as you can see for this one, the soil isn't really getting consistently wet because the holes are kind of all around the edges. So that's probably something that I need to fix for next year. And then this one in here, this is nasturtium. This one I just seeded a little bit ago. So definitely don't expect that one to be germinating yet. So for those, I'm gonna do a whole winter sowing update where I go through what I've got and I do some potting up and talking about some lessons learned from growing them. It's a little bit early for that because some of them aren't quite ready to be potted up, but when it is time, I will show you guys all of the success from winter sowing. And Henry is back to join us for the rest of the raised bed tour. Hey buddy, what you doing? Yeah. Now, one of the things that really annoys me about the internet is when I see someone do something, but they don't show the end result. Now, I try to space out a lot of my filming so that when I do a video, I show you guys how I'm doing it, what I'm doing, and then what the result is. But sometimes that takes a long time to do. So I did an experiment with these two raised beds behind me. I turned them into essentially low tunnels, or a type of cold frame for the winter. And I did a video about setting up low tunnels to extend your growing season. And the goal here was to test the real limits of the growing season here in Maryland Zone 7A. So I believe it was December that I set these up. I put the hoops in, and then I put the frost cloth over top, and then I put a piece of clear plastic over top of them for the winter. Now I have taken that piece of clear plastic off now, but you can see these beds are looking very mature for early April because they got a super head start. Everything in here germinated very, very early because the plastic on top let light through. I did have to take it off occasionally to water, but it let light through, and it kept the soil temperature consistently warm. So it would heat it up during the day, and even if it refroze at night, it would instantly thaw the next day. So I have planted a lot of cold weather loving stuff in here. Lots of spinach, lettuce, kale, and we've already been picking on a lot of this so far too. So this isn't even all of it. We've already picked down the spinach a couple of times. So I will be doing this again. I will be seeding as early as possible, throwing some plastic on top. That way I can start to harvest greens in probably mid-March, whereas before that was the time where I would be seeding things, or early March I might be seeding things. But this really helped to give it a jump start. This bed is looking similarly amazing. I planted Bulgarian giant leeks this year. Last year they were kind of a bust because I planted them too late, but the strategy of planting them in this bed and then covering it with frost cloth and plastic really helped to get a jump start on things. Lots of beautiful Bloomsdale spinach in here that, again, we have been picking off of already a bunch. And I've got a lot of fava beans in here. You can see we've already got some blooms and the start of some fava beans coming. Fava beans are very cold hardy, and they are excellent nitrogen fixers for the soil. So if you're growing something that's a real nitrogen hog, you want to make sure to rotate your crops to ensure that you're planting something like a fava bean or a pea or something like that that will help replenish the nitrogen levels in the soil without you having to add more fertilizer, though of course that's always an option too. I will begin fertilizing these plants soon. But if I can minimize the use of fertilizers, that's always a good thing because it's cheaper, right? So up here in these beds, I've got just a lot of the same, lots of sugar snap peas here. My daughter loves picking and eating sugar snap peas, so I've grown a lot of that because I want to be growing things that we're actually eating. And then a lot of kale up here, and then I've got a couple rows of winter giant spinach, which I got those seeds either from a seed swap or from freeheirloomseeds.org. I can't remember. I've never grown winter giant. I usually grow Bloomsdale, so I'm excited to see how big that gets. This bed is something that I made. I got a lot of rain last night, so I've got some water still on here, but I made a cold frame for this bed using PVC pipe, and this is just another method of getting an early start in your garden and protecting your crops from the cold. This one, I never put frost cloth over it. I just have this plastic, and this one I seeded later than the other beds. I probably seeded this one in about February. So this has some fava beans and a bunch of different types of lettuce in it, and honestly, I'm getting to the point of where I am taking this cover halfway off like this most days because it heats up so fast with the sun, even if it is just a couple degrees out. I do have a video all about how to make a cold frame PVC pipe, how I made this one. It was a very cheap and easy project that has really given me some more months to use this bed. And then over here we have perhaps the thing that I have talked about the most to anyone who will listen, my beautiful spinach bed. This looks amazing in terms of growth for April, especially because we have already picked down the spinach 2 or 3 times. This bed was probably my biggest experiment. I seeded spinach in here in November. It got probably its first set of true leaves before winter, and then I just let it go. It had snow on it. It had super freezing temperatures. It was exposed to all of the elements. I did not cover it at all. Very early on in the season, I did end up throwing a small piece of plastic over it just to help try and warm up the soil a little bit. But other than that, that was only on for a week or 2, and then it just kept blowing off. So I took it off and just decided to see what would happen to the spinach. Well, the spinach rebounded on its own very, very early in the season. And this is something I did after my mom showed me how well her spinach was doing when she left her plants in the ground in the fall. She was able to pick on them all winter, even without protecting them, with snow falling on them. When the plants were nice and mature, they did just fine in our super, super harsh winter this last winter. And we love to make spinach salads, so I will be doing this again and continuing to push the limits of what I can grow when it comes to greens. I've found spinach to be the cold hardiest of all of them, and it's probably the best for you out of all of them too, so that is excellent news. And then of course I just have a couple random kales in here. Honestly, a couple things that I don't remember what they are, so it'll be a fun little surprise. Most of them are looking like kale though. Now for the last bed in the raised bed area, this is a new bed that we put in this year. Vego Garden sent me this bed and I did a video showing how I save money filling raised beds by using yard waste and half-used compost and leaves and all sorts of stuff like that. This is our mega bed, so I did have to use some extension panels on this one, but I'm really pleased with the progress on this bed so far. I did put in a bunch of fava beans here on the end just because this is a brand new bed and I kind of wanted to jumpstart the nitrogen in this soil. I have a couple heads of cauliflower in here. I'm not really sure if I'll get much. I've never had a lot of success growing cauliflower, so it was just kind of experiment. I got the seeds for free and figured why the hell not. This is a bunch of rows of radishes here, more sugar snap peas, and then I've got some sorrel down here, which is a perennial. It's a very tart leafy green that I like to chop up and put in salads. It gives them a really nice flavor. And then here in the middle, I've got a really cool little worm compost bin. So I also have a video on this. For this one, the idea is that you put compost in the bin and you put worms in, and there are holes all up and down the bin in here. And then of course, air holes up here. You don't bury it completely and you keep the lid on it so that it doesn't get too wet, but the worms then find the food and compost it in place, which is really awesome because then they're just pooping out all of their wonderful worm poop, which is packed full of nutrients and people pay good money for it. So I'm hoping that this experiment this year is a success. I got the bucket for free, so honestly, if it isn't a success, I'm not really out, you know, like 40 bucks buying an actual plastic worm composter. This is pretty much the same. It's just an old container from a restaurant in town that they get pickles shipped to them in. So that's what I use for the bucket, and I just drilled a bunch of holes in it. Now, when it becomes time to mulch here, I will extend this mulched landscaping area to have this bed here. And I don't know that I'll plant anything around it. I will probably plant something right here to kind of fill in the area, some sort of perennial or something like that. And then all of this whole area here will be killed off and sheet mulched and just join up with this whole mulched area. I will probably put another stepping stone in here just so I can maintain access to both sides of each of these beds. And then of course the access to this one will remain open on the other side here. And one of the things that I'm a huge proponent of is companion planting. So I don't like to have like an area for my vegetables in this garden and an area for my flowers in this garden and blah, 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 blah. I like to mix everything in because if I don't want to have to use pesticides, I want to be encouraging all of the good bugs that I know help me control the bad bugs to move into my garden. So generally, I'm going to be planting very, very pollinator-friendly plants, plants that good bugs are really attracted to. So I want to be attracting parasitic wasps, I want to be attracting ladybugs, I want to be attracting all sorts of good things to come in and take care of the bad bugs. There are also some flowers that are just a good thing to plant around your vegetables because they have strong scents, like marigolds are a good one. A lot of people will plant basils with their tomato as well. The strong scent on that can help supposedly keep away things like tomato hornworms. I don't know how much of that works, but I will say I did not have to use any pesticides in my garden last year, the year that I really ratcheted up all of my companion planting. So I've got a lot of pollinator-friendly perennials planted all around. So the moss phlox is a good example. I've got a bunch of catmint in here too. I've got some, what do I have up here? Just some other flowering herbs that I will put in with my beds when I put my vegetables in. But I also, in bare areas like here, maybe up there, and then on the corner up here, I will put large zinnias. So zinnias are going to attract a bajillion bees and all sorts of good bugs that you want to have in your garden. So I like to mix it up. I also find that it creates like a really layered, textured, full approach to your garden. If you're not just growing one thing in one spot, you have varying colors and shapes and sizes and heights, and it really creates a beautiful, beautiful looking space. Now last year, other than building the greenhouse, I'd say our biggest project was putting in this small ponds and then joining up the landscaping over here with the landscaping over here and killing off all of this grass. Now, if you look closely, you can see that we are definitely due to come in here with another layer of sheet mulching and some thick mulch, because generally I find that first year after you kill off your grass, you're gonna have a lot of breakthrough grass, whereas as the years go by, you see over here, we don't see a ton of weeds. We're not seeing a ton of breakthrough grass, if any, but back here, that was the first year we killed it off, and so it's still pretty overrun with weeds. Now, I really like to throw down some cardboard. I know that people have varying opinions about cardboard and whether or not they want to use it because of ink and toxins and blah, blah, blah. Honestly, I think cardboard's fine. I'm not going to overthink a lot of those things. I just don't use like tape and sticky stuff and colored newspaper, but I will use paper bags and plain boxes and regular newspaper. So this area, I think my real goal is to get this area looking nice and full this year. It did end up looking pretty full last year, even with some of the new plants, but a lot of perennials, the first year you put them in, they generally don't look very good. It's really that second and third year that you see their full potential. So I'm going to have coneflowers coming in here and spreading, looking really, really nice. I will have catmint here. I want to plant something kind of up close here to kind of choke out the weeds, kind of like I've done with the moss phlox here, just something to really cover this area and then kind of go up onto the rocks. I've got a perennial lavender bush that I just cut back here, and then a couple of other random things. I've got some milkweed back here, and I've got another lavender bush and another milkweed here, so a really big variety of perennials. And then back here behind the pond, honestly, I'm really not sure what I'm gonna do with my rosemary bush. This rosemary bush was looking amazing until about a couple weeks ago. And then it just all turned brown. So it was too early to be pruning it. So I don't know if it's just reached the end of its life or what, but I'm gonna cut it back here soon and see if it rebounds. And if it doesn't, I will just have to pull it out. Ultimately, I'm hoping that the real show back here will be this lilac bush that was here when we bought the house, but it was a little bit smaller and we moved it up here. So my hope is that it gets tall enough that it's kind of the centerpiece of this area back here. And then I've got lots of spreading ground covers here, some perennial mums, and then more aster back here. And then that is a little Kim lilac bush. So this one hopefully will also get quite large. My mom has these around her patio, and I really, really like how they look. They're very, very pretty shrubs. So I decided to add one in back here to be kind of a staple piece in the landscape as well. Over here is kind of turning into mostly like a utility area. We're hoping that these these arborvitaes get tall like our neighbors all the way over there and provide some additional privacy here. And then I've just got a bunch of hyacinths that I've planted back here. I've had these back here for a couple years, and I may dig them up and move them at some point, but these are probably my favorite color hyacinths. I really, really love this color. And I actually looked up, I didn't know if hyacinths would change colors with the alkalinity of the soil like hydrangeas do, because when I first planted these, they were pink, and then the ones I just showed you, they were like a bluish purple. But last year and this year, they have been this really gorgeous kind of like fuchsia pinkish purple. But I'm not really gonna be planting much back here because I want to have access from the patio here to this large rain bladder. Mike built a little platform for this here because it's kind of on a slope, and this is like our reservoir for extra rainwater in the summer. And we used to have like a privacy screen here that we grew a moonflower vine on, but since I'm planting a bunch over here, I'm going to make the walkway to get down to this area and the rain bladder from here, and maybe like rearrange the furniture a little bit. So to be determined on that. That's a very low priority thing to think about at this point. Now, when we first put in this full bed all along the fence line, that was the first thing we did when we moved in. We just grew like all sorts of stuff in it, but over the years, I've kind of made this an all perennial bed. So we've got some coneflowers popping up here. We've got Joe Pye weed back here. We have a lot of that beautiful aster that is getting quite large, and that I need to split this one up a little bit. We've got black-eyed Susans, we've got perennial sage, we've got whatever this is that I forgot about because I bought it for like $1 on a clearance rack, but it was pretty last year. And then the fruit bushes start. So we've got a bunch of blueberry bushes. Some of them are looking not so hot, some of them are looking really great, like this one. And then catmint bushes. So the goal here is to, once I clean this whole area up and mulch it, these catmints will get big and beautiful and kind of cover the ground around the blueberry bushes. And as the blueberry bushes get taller, they will then be taller than the catmint, so they won't be crowding each other for space. They were kind of crowding each other for space last year, the first year, so I had to keep the catmint trimmed back a little bit, but I think that ultimately, in the long term, it will work out, just not yet. So another thing we started last fall was this little berry patch area. So this was all grass, and we decided to just kind of extend the garden area into a little berry patch. So this is not finished yet. We started planting it in the fall, and I actually just finished sheet mulching off with cardboard and newspaper and compost in this area. So ultimately what we'll do is mulch this whole area when we mulch everything else using just, regular brown shredded mulch. And then we will put pavers back here. So you'll be able to walk back and access the blueberry bushes on this side and the blueberry bushes on this side. So you'll walk back, and ultimately this will probably get big enough to make it so that this isn't a natural walkway. But for this year, we will be able to walk straight back through. You'll hit the cherry tree here, and then there will be a second path. Looks like someone's been digging around in here since I finished this yesterday. But ultimately, there will be a second path going up through this area with pavers going up through here so that you can access this side of the blueberry bushes, and then this will be like an L shape of berry bushes. So these are raspberry bushes. The taller ones are ones that I dug up from my neighbor's yard. So they are already pretty tall and producing foliage because we dug up full plants. And then the ones that we ordered are different varieties, and those we planted last fall. So those are really starting from scratch. So my goal is to create like some sort of L-shaped string trellis to manage all of these berries, this L shape of berry plants back here. And ultimately, maybe we will extend this area back a little bit, but we decided to just cut it off here where these two fruit trees are now, and not give ourselves more work than we can keep up with, because we always say we're not going to do a ton and then we end up doing a ton. So back here we have all of the fruit trees that we planted last fall. All of them did make it through their first winter but one, so I need to reach out to the company and see if they'll send me a replacement. That was our dwarf Bing cherry tree, did not make it through, which that was the one I was most excited about. So definitely gonna have to reach out to the company and see if they can send us a replacement, because they were not cheap. And then this is the clearance perennial garden that I put in, I think 2 years ago now. So you can see the grass and weed breakthrough on this one is definitely not nearly as bad as the area that we sheet mulched over last year. And this area, the goal here is to have things that do not need watered. So I don't want to come out here and have to water anything. I've got grasses, I've got rosemary, I've got lavender, I have a hydrangea back here, I've got sedum, I've got catmint, and then of course we have what is now the tallest tree in the yard, this eastern redbud. I absolutely love redbuds. They are some of the first trees to like look really, really pretty in the early spring. They have these gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous bright pink magenta flowers and buds on them. And I really liked the one our neighbor had, and it was really nice to have because even though it wasn't in our backyard, it was in our sight line in the backyard, so it looked so beautiful in the spring, but they cut it down last year, so I was a little sad. But redbuds are a native tree here in Maryland Zone 7A, and this one has grown really, really fast, so that's great. And back here behind it is a pawpaw tree. Eventually the goal is to take down this weed tree. I'm not even sure what type of tree it is, but the goal is to take that down when the redbud gets large enough and the pawpaw tree back here gets larger in a couple of years. And then also we're thinking about maybe sheet mulching off this whole area once the trees get bigger and start to kind of shade out the area and maybe do some sort of shade garden back here. But we'll see, because back here is like groundhog territory. We have groundhogs under the shed here. They have lived here for longer than I've been alive. Obviously not the same groundhogs, but if you know anything about groundhogs, you know that when groundhogs live somewhere, you can remove them, but groundhogs will come back. They will always come back. They will find the place under whatever structure they were living in, unless you fill it with cement. They're gonna come back and they're gonna move in there because they know that it's a good place to live. So our neighbor told us that there have been groundhogs for as long as she's been here, and she's been here for longer than I've been alive. So we just decided to try and work with the groundhogs instead of against them. So I try planting things back here that they are not interested in eating. So they're not interested in like the rosemary, the lavender, the sage. They don't bother sedum. They don't bother catmint. They do chomp down the milkweed that I have back here, but my goal this year is to cover it until it gets big enough that it can kind of outrun them growth-wise, and maybe they'll just nibble on the bottom. And I did have to remove the black-eyed Susans from back here because they were chomping those down to the bit. They would just be rebounding, and then I would come out the next morning and they would just be tiny little nubs, and I knew that Tammy and Tommy had come out and eaten them. Back here I also put rhubarb. So I've never grown rhubarb before, so I'm very excited about this. These came as little bare roots and they are already sprouting these leaves. They will get very big, and of course rhubarb, the leaves are not edible, but the stems are. And the stems on this one are like shades of bright red, so I'm hoping it'll look really pretty back here. And this is perennial too, so it will come back year after year. And I've read that since the leaves are toxic, groundhogs will not eat it. So fingers crossed that's the case. I have not seen them this year, but these leaves that have sprouted on all of my different rhubarbs that I've planted back here have lived to see another day. So we're hoping that means that the groundhogs will leave them alone, and I can just put a couple things back here that they might want to eat. Otherwise, if they stay back here and don't bother the stuff up front, it's fine with me. I don't care if they live back here as long as they don't bother my vegetable garden. So other than the raspberry plants I planted along the side of the house that we dug up from my neighbor's yard, that is about where we're at with the garden right now. I am absolutely itching to do more cleanup, but it is still a little bit early, so I'm trying my hardest to not chop all of the dead foliage down yet and give the bugs a little bit more time to wake up. Anything that I do chop down, I'm just throwing into a little pile in the back of the yard, so if there is something overwintering in there, we're not like destroying it or crushing it or burning it or anything. So this is how everything is looking. Before we wrap up, I'm gonna give you guys one little peek at the front project that Mike is working on right now as his big early spring project. And that is some retaining walls to turn the front yard into some nice growing area. So we'll go take a look at that and then we'll wrap up. So this is a peek at what Mike is working on up here. Our neighbors have these gorgeous retaining walls in their front yard, and we decided that it would be a really great way to kill off a lot of this grass, because the goal is to kill grass and grow better things instead, and make it look really pretty too. So I'm going to be planting a lot of perennials up here so that it's not really something that we have a lot of maintenance for. It's just, you know, the once or twice a year pruning. And then we're going to do it on the other side too. So really all he's doing is digging out a trench and then tamping it down and then stacking these blocks, which we just got from Lowe's. They have a little ledge on the back of them, so we can just kind of build them up. And as he builds them up, he tamps down the dirt in the back here, make sure everything is level. And it's kind of been a little bit of learning as we go for this project, because this is the first time he's done it, and we use the smaller side as kind of a test run, and now he's doing what's kind of like the trickier and larger side, but it's looking really great, and I'm looking forward to having him turn this project over to me so I can start planting. So that is about where we're at on April 5th in the garden in Maryland's Zone 7A. One of my biggest regrets last year is I took a lot of pictures, but I did not do any video footage because I had not really started posting on YouTube yet, and I wasn't taking a lot of video. I definitely regret that. So this year, one of the things I'm going to be trying to do is at least monthly garden tours, just because the garden can change so much from even week to week in the spring and summer, and I would really like to document that this year. So until my next video, which hopefully will be in about a month, happy planting.